Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and it's my pleasure to introduce you or reintroduce you to a good friend of our ministry and her ministry, Shannon Deitz, author of Exposed and Redeemed, and the I guess you are the Chief Executive Officer of Hopeful Hearts Ministry, giving a voice to survivors of abuse. Shannon, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Reverend. I'm blessed to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's a delight. April, for our audience information, Donald Trump on March the 29th issued a declaration or proclamation proclaiming April 2018 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month. It also, in prior years, has been National Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. This adds to this official position that we need to be talking about something that's just become very prevalent in the news, and that is the stories of sexual abuse. It's far past the days of the Catholic Church and the movie about the expose that was done, the Harvey Weinstein story, which is now covering the news, and a lot of people who have experienced this. But you personally experienced it and spent nearly 2 decades of your life in a very self-destructive downward spiral. Take us back, as much as Paul tells us forgetting what's behind. We're also told in the book of Revelation that we're overcomers by the word of our testimony and the blood of the Lamb, which means we do have to recount certain things that help shape who we are today and how we can identify with what you've been through, that so many of our audience has been through, but yet have not taken it out of the darkness and brought it into the light.
Right. Absolutely. And actually, it's really cathartic to be able to voice, my story and give my testimony. And the more years that I've been doing it, it is a part of my past. And it's kind of that dark thread to my beautiful tapestry. So I want to encourage those that are listening that the more that you are able to speak about it in a very safe, comfortable place, it's very healing, and it's a part of your healing journey. But my story is, I am an incest survivor by my grandfather when I was very young, but those memories did not come back until I was nearly 40, in my late 30s. And that happens quite a bit, which is why you're also seeing a lot of the hashtag Me Too, where memories are just starting to be surfaced or spoken. I was raped in high school by a good friend that I had known for most of my life. And then that sent me on that downhill spiral. I couldn't tell anybody. There was no way I could tell anybody. And plus, I thought that it was my fault, and I put myself in that position. So by the time I reached college, I thought that I found a man that would treat me differently, with dignity and respect, and he raped me as well. He took that trust from me, and he raped me. And that kind of was the beginning to me going forward and saying, my own, no more. I can't do this anymore. And when I got married and being able to deal with having kids and realizing that I can't be in full control, that God has to have some control, that God is in control, is when I began to talk about it. And I was working with teens and talking about what I'd been through, not wanting them to feel like they had to hold back anything that they were going through or put themselves in a position of where I was at that time. And that is what has been the beauty about what God has done in my life, is using that story, using our voice, my voice, and so many others to be able to say, that shame is not yours. That guilt is not yours. That was never meant to happen to you. Move forward in the sense of your healing journey. What can you do to not just be a survivor, but be a thriver?
The Harvey Weinstein story brought out something that unfortunately goes back to the first mention of the words casting couch appeared in Variety magazine on November the 24th, 1937. That's 81 years ago. That this concept of exchanging sexual favors or being forced to provide sexual favors to land a role has become so ingrained that it's a term that was coined in 1937.
Right.
And everybody knows what it means, and there has been no outrage. There has been no outcry. And this one story of Harvey Weinstein, who is the icon now for the casting couch, has brought out into the light how many people have been impacted by events like his activities and yet have not been able to tell their story. Why are people so reluctant to tell their story, and are we seeing an increase in people saying, yes, that happened to me?
Well, first of all, yes, absolutely. We're seeing an increase in saying that it happened to them because now, it's more comfortable when you're among the masses. When you're being that first person, who I tip my hat off to is that first person, whoever that was, that came out and said, this isn't right. I should not be treated this way. Whoever that was had very healthy boundaries to say, I don't care if I get this part or not. You don't treat me that way. What's sad is just like you said, from 50 years ago, that this has become a mainstay, that it's just something that if you were going to get in that industry, you almost expected it, which is, again, why nobody spoke, because it was a part of the culture. And so why is it that I need to, nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to take this pain and this guilt and this shame that I feel because I should have known. Right? And I've been hearing people say, well, they wanted the part. And it's sad. It's a sad situation because for women and men, because many men have come forward too, to feel that they have to put themselves in that victim mode in order to succeed in something that is their gift and their talent. And I think it's not even in just that industry. This is within families. It's with what happened to me in high school. Like, it was just something that I went ahead and said, yes, I had sex with this young man because it was kind of the norm. It was what was expected. Did I say how violent it was? Did I say that I said no and that he forced me? No, because who was going to believe me? Who was going to believe me when I was with all of them all these years, getting into the same trouble that they were getting into? So it's the same mentality, and that's what's being broken open, is saying, okay, again, so this new hashtag, no more of this. Let's set what is the proper example and let people start saying, this is what I will accept. This is what I'm worth. And this is what we should accept as a society, rather than create these, couch mentalities.
Shannon, it would be one thing if this was confined to the secular world, but it's not. And when we take a look at human sex trafficking, when we take a look at the incidents of sexual abuse in the home, it's equally divided between the secular and the Christian church-going, even pastors are falling by the numbers into this, and it's beyond lust, it's beyond temptation. I don't know what category it falls in. Where do we place this, where it so clearly defiles a woman or a young man, for that matter, who is also impacted by same-sex encounter, or any other encounter?
Well,
What categories does it fall into?
well, it's the main. To me, it is the lust, but it's the first thing that the enemy used ever to be able to break apart our innocence. I mean, the enemy took Adam and Eve, who were pure and whole and loving, and then made them see their sexuality. And then he took their sexuality that was a gift from God and then made it ugly. And so he's been doing it. I mean, this is the one thing, if you look at the one thing that can really take a hold of men and women, and from, I don't care if it's secular or Christian or whatever faith that you are, it runs the gamut through every single person in this world. And it's the one thing, this lust, I don't know if secular world or other religions would say sinfulness, but the sinfulness of our nature, if you will. And that is how the enemy then gets in, and it's through our advertising, it's through the pornography, then it's into our just natural desires that have been confused. And this need to think, well, I deserve to have that, or that desire, that longing to have this fulfilled is going to be so much greater than my ability to say that's not right and I shouldn't do this. And the enemy is just stuck in all of that. And I feel like that's the battle that we're in, is to say, build people up with the armor that they need to be able to stop. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Since we last met, which was at the release of Redeemed, the story of a marriage torn by the effects of past abuse and restored by faith, Hopeful Hearts Ministry has grown by the number of calls you're getting, by the number of people you are hearing from that are going through the same thing that you went through, that could identify with the story of both exposed and redeemed, which was the life you led and what you become through faith, that you were able to grab a hold of. Is there a common thread in these phone calls you get, or these emails that you get, or these the profile of the victims? Is there something that we can look for that helps identify it before it happens, or is it so insidious? Is it so deceptive that it's unidentifiable? It's just shocking.
That's a really good question. And, that's kind of trying to ask, is there any of us that are the perfect people that have never, felt any kind of discomfort or guilt or shame from something that's been said to us or done to us, right? I mean, I think in all reality, every single one of us has been abused in some sense in their life, bullied or put down by somebody that maybe didn't even realize that they were treating them that way, in that sense. So I have people that come in with all different kinds of circumstances. And I think it depends on the person, really, and the family that you've been brought up in, as to how you receive and take a situation. Because I can have, a young man in here that has been neglected by both parents, which I'm kind of telling a story of somebody I've seen that was just put away and never nurtured and never loved. And so then he got himself in all these different circumstances. And now he's saying, no more, I don't want to live this life anymore. But in regards to the, sexual abuse and that sort of thing, we get, to me, the common thread is the lies that we listen to that are embedded within us at whatever young age, and take away those boundaries. And so these lies of, well, you'll never be good enough, or you don't have a voice, you're invisible, there's nothing you can say to make anybody believe you or understand. And so you just keep listening to those lies, and you allow other things to happen because you don't know your worth, and you don't have the boundaries to say, you can't speak to me that way, you can't, touch me that way, you can't do all these things.
in your life, in your experience, it impacted when you came to the realization that this had gone on, that you were married, you had a husband, and intimacy with your husband had to have been impacted, and your sense of who you were, all of a sudden you found out that you were actually somebody else and that you had been through these suppressed experiences. So you're coming face to face with a new you, and you have your husband there wanting to love you, support you, and comfort you through it. In all these cases, even like abortion, there's a man involved. We tend to forget that there's a father of that aborted child. And we're seeing more men go into abortion recovery because they're having a hard time reconciling. They're living with the guilt of that. What role do spouses play in helping their abused spouse get through the process of dealing with it, acknowledging it, reconciling it, understanding it, and dealing with the anger?
They play an essential role. The spouse, whether it be male or female spouse, whichever it is, partner or whatever, they play an essential role because they're the ones that have for instance, I'll just speak about Neil and I because it's the best way to talk about it. He was the safest person for me out of my own family, out of anybody in my life. So he was the safest for me that I could truly be me. And whether that be an ugly side of me because I didn't know how to receive his love, which that is a big thing. I was so used to this kind of screwed up world, but it was my comfort. Even in addiction, it's this way. If you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, it's a bad world, but it's what you know. So when you come clean, or for my instance, when I started really healing and recognizing my worth and what I deserved, and even the desire for sexuality and intimacy, all these things, it's what I wanted and what I need, but yet it was so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. So that is very key when the partner can come in and say, like, I'm your safe place still. I'm an unconditional love. I am here for you no matter what. I don't expect them to ever understand. I don't think any of us would want them to understand what we go through or what, we struggle with. But to know that they will love us, even if one day we have a trigger and go, oh, or, get upset about something and they don't understand why. But if they could hold you and hug you and say, I love you, I'm here anyway, it's a sacrifice. I feel like my husband is a saint for the years that he has spent with me and me pushing him away. I'm grateful for him, but I know so many feel the same for their partners as well.
Shannon, when you went through this, what was the process like for you? What did you go through? Where did you find your comfort, your solace, and what led you to found this ministry, Hopeful Hearts, right, that can be reached through shannondeitz.com, and that's DEITZ, not DIE, but DEITZ.com.
Well, it's interesting because you say that you went through, and it's what I go through. And I don't mean that to deter anybody that's just starting their healing journey. But it is a part of me, and I am very healed, and it's like, you don't go back to the beginning, but you have these moments of, oh, I've surpassed that hill, that mountain, and before you know it, something else might erupt, and and you kind of got to go over that mountain. But you know that you are strong. You begin to feel that courage. And so that process started with me talking, with me telling. I was volunteering with youth, and I was so desperate for them to not go through what I went through. I started revealing part of my story. And the more that they started coming to me, the more I felt comfortable to give more of what I went through. And the more I spoke, which is why Hopeful Hearts is about having your voice, it came out. It was like getting rid of that poison inside of me. And that is exactly what's needed on this healing journey. And then going into counseling. I have been through therapy, and I don't want anybody to ever be ashamed or afraid of therapy. But I had a wonderful therapist who, for the last 20 years, and she's still with me. And if you're in this area, I send so many to her. And she was just wonderful to have that. And also to have other people that went through what I went through, which is what we do, peer support, to know that I'm not crazy and I'm not alone, and I'm not the only one dealing with this. But in starting Hopeful Hearts Ministry, the more I was speaking to teens, I got on a national tour and was speaking to all these teens, the adults, the chaperones, the parents, the ministers that were coming up to me in such an amount that was crazy, saying, "You're telling my story, but I've never told anybody." And it just hit me in prayer, like, why aren't they telling? Like, look at the position they're in, and they're not telling anybody. And that's what made me, I feel this is God's ministry. And I'll say that when he wants it to end, it'll end. He wants people to be able to not let that poison get them inside. He wants them to get it out. And that's why I started what I do.
Well, we're talking to Shannon Deitz, author of 2 wonderful books, Redeemed and Exposed, which is her journey through sharing her story of being sexually abused, and her journey to the other side of it doesn't change her past, but her perspective and her ability to be reconciled through God and her relationship, her faith, her family, the peer support group she's founded, Hopeful Hearts Ministry, all of that giving a voice to survivors of abuse, but starting with herself, as each one of us must. You have a story to tell that may be hidden in the darkness, that little dark darling of your heart that you think that you were hiding from God, but God knows your story, and there are people that can help you. And this is a time of becoming aware, not about a political issue. We're talking about a social issue, and one that robs you of your relationship, not only with your fellow man, not only with the people that you love, but robs you of your relationship with the loving Father, who will take what the enemy meant for evil and will work for his good so that people can thrive. Shannon is thriving, even though her past has places in it that are not sources of pride, and the telling of the story, she says, is cathartic because she gets to revisit from a perspective of who she is today, not who she was when she was going through that. She doesn't have to go back to that time in order to recount that time. Again, the website is shannonmdeitz.com. The ministry is Hopeful Hearts Ministry, giving a voice to survivors of abuse. Her 2 books are Redeemed and Exposed. You can find them on Amazon or go to our website, ignitianation.com, and click on Books and Media. You can also follow Shannon at Shannon's YouTube channel that you can find on her website. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about setting boundaries, what you can do to create an environment as a parent, as a young person, as a grandparent. Now the grandparents are more intimately involved than they've ever been before. As a leader within your community, within your church, how you too can help prevent this kind of abuse from happening in your locale. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Shannon Deitz, founder of Hopeful Heart Ministry and author of 2 books, Exposed, Inexcusable Me, irreplaceable hymn and redeem the story of a marriage torn by the effects of past abuse and restored by faith. Shannon, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Reverend.
Shannon, this being National Sexual Abuse Awareness, Child Abuse Awareness Month, being aware is one thing. And I think we're all quite aware because the headlines have been filled with these stormy weather or Stormy Daniels or, some story about the sexual escapades of a president, a past president, a new president, the next president. It doesn't matter. It's always about these sexual encounters, and they always are related to outside of marriage, which already violates the covenant in the Bible. The shame that we see in Genesis was being naked in front of someone that wasn't your spouse. Okay? That's what the message of the Bible is that the sin is being naked in front of somebody who's not your spouse. That's from the message in Genesis of we were hiding because we were afraid, and we know that Satan is the author of fear, not God. So this became shameful in light of the fact that they became aware of their nakedness, and they shouldn't have been afraid to be naked. They'd already been naked before they got before, nor should they have been concerned about in front of each other. But now there was a third party involved, and that was Satan, and being exposed to someone other than your spouse is something that should not be.
Right.
We've lost all of that as a foundational tenet of our understanding of life, and now we're in this new free society. It takes me back to the 60s that I lived through, which was make love, not war, and if it feels good, do it, and it's all about me, and I can do whatever I want. I'm anti-establishment. That was our message back then as we were protesting in Vietnam, that we were taking on the establishment. Now it's anything and everything. And what can we do to create safe homes, safe churches, safe schools, safe encounters?
Mm-hmm. Well, it all begins in the home, and and that's even just assuming you have a good nucleus of a family, right? But it begins about teaching and nurturing children in the very beginning, and giving them good, proper boundaries of what is right, what is wrong. We all know that seems so simple, but to be able to say and to voice, I should not be treated this way. I should not be spoken to this way. When a parent gives discipline to a child, essentially they're giving their boundary. You do not speak to me that way. You do not, behave that way. It is, that behavior does this to me. I don't like that behavior. You know what I mean? So it's being able to properly give these type of boundaries, and to have the proper conversations at the right age, and not be afraid to talk about sexuality and what is the right tenet to that, like what is proper and good, and not just being like, well, don't have sex and don't do this and don't do that. As you know, most kids and teenagers are going to do the opposite of what anybody says don't do. You have to explain and give an understanding and allow them to really receive who they are as a creation of God, as that gift, that they are that temple, and that's my opinion in that regard.
Now, behind you have your mantra, which I have a voice. It's on the wall behind you there at the ministry. On your website, you have an event, a gala that you throw. You just had one February the 16th. How was the turnout for that?
It was fantastic, and we raised 15,000 more than we have in years past, and most of our area flooded by Harvey, so it was way more than we anticipated. Very happy.
I love the invitation that says attire is hurricane chic.
Yeah.
It's
It was
whatever,
come with what you have,
right,
basically.
whatever survived the flood,
That's right.
which you actually did. Your home was flooded.
My
Now,
home and the offices were flooded, yes.
so was a total loss for you?
For the most part, we had 6 feet of water. So imagine the water was up to that half up there in the offices. But, they got us in about January. My home, I'm still living upstairs, and we have a trailer in our driveway. But they're still working on the downstairs. Yeah. We were rescued by boat. It was,
So,
it was fun.
so,
Not
so
fun, but
we may have um, seen you on TV.
possibly, right? Our area, Kingwood, I'm from Kingwood, we were the hardest hit in the Houston area. So it very well could have seen us on TV, that's for sure.
You know, looking at a traumatic situation like that, how did what you went through prepare you to be able to deal with going through another trauma in your life?
I love that. And, during the break, we were kind of discussing this. The minute I got off that boat, which kind of sounds biblical in itself, but the minute I got off that boat and was in a safe place in my in-laws' home, I was covered in peace. I sat with my head in my hands and went, Lord, you've saved me from so much more, in many ways more difficult. And you've brought me to great places of joy. I mean, how am I to think that you won't, bring us to that same place from this? And so it's that hope, again, which is where I got Hopeful Hearts Ministry, is there is always that better day. And God can take any circumstance and make a greater good. I'm not one that likes to hear it was done for a reason. I don't believe that my Lord puts things on people on purpose, that he says that this person's going to deal with this, this, and this. What I know for certain is that any of the circumstances that I've been in just my life, which has been quite a bit, any circumstance, the Lord can take that and bring good from that. But you have to allow him to, and you have to move, just like you were saying to me earlier.
This month actually marks the 5th anniversary of you launching Hopeful Hearts first abuse awareness project of I Have a Voice.
Right.
So on your webpage, you have your I Have a Voice, and these are the testimonies of a childhood sexual abuse and pornography addiction, when past abuse comes between a marriage, domestic abuse, dealing with childhood sexual issues, dealing with forgiveness, dealing with childhood neglect, abuse, and domestic abuse, child molestation and priestly abuse, domestic violence and a homicide attempt, rape, abuse, neglect, middle school rape and bullied by peers. These are firsthand eyewitness reports from people who you've given them a voice through Hopeful Hearts Ministry. And you have been very kind that early on, early last year, one of our audience members needed to be connected to someone like yourself. And we referred her to you, and she found great help and has found a great counselor and is now working through and on the other side of the trauma. And we know firsthand the work that you do. The message that you have for people in creating boundaries, in telling their story, not keeping it a secret, removing the shame of victimhood. It's not you. It's not a victim mentality. What would you call the frame of mind that you're hoping that people will take when they come through the other side of this counseling and through the other side of prayer and a relationship with God?
That they, don't mean to interrupt at the end of that, that they're a thriver.
They're a
That,
thriver.
that you're a victim in the circumstance, whatever happens, that can, you remain that victim if you stay stuck in that, and that you don't move forward and you allow it to keep you, whatever darkness that is. You're a survivor when you start to say, okay, enough of that. I'm moving forward. I'm going to be proactive and try to do more. And a lot of people kind of get stuck in that survivor stage because they're like, all right, well, I'm not going to let that define me. I'm not going to let that deal with me, but I'm also not going to deal with it. I don't really want to talk about it. I don't want to work through it. I'm fine. And you could go and be that way probably till you die if you really want to, but you're not living, because it's still in your reactions and responses to other people and life in general. And there's still those lies that get stuck with, I don't know if happiness will ever be for me, or I don't know if I can ever find true love, or whatever your particular lie might be. When you thrive is when you go from being a survivor to thriver, is when you start saying, I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be the person that God actually created me to be, that had nothing to do with a circumstance or circumstances in my past. And so you start truly working through that and gaining that courage and that strength, and true joy, and how to stop certain, aspects that can bring you down. And that is what being a thriver is. And that's what everybody in this life should try and strive to become.
Shannon, oftentimes in a marriage, there will be certain triggers that come along the way, and I don't want to put this on women, but husbands are not that great at asking questions in response to a reaction. So the wife blows up on the husband. He doesn't say, listen, I know that I touched on something that really upset you, but can we examine why that bothers you, as opposed to the fact that it bothers you?
Right.
That's the question you hope somebody would ask, and just acknowledge, saying, okay, I can tell that really upset you, but can we examine what the cause, why does that upset you? It's happened before, why does it? So it's, the pushing on a place, well, a doctor pushes on a place, and you say that hurts, and then he pushes again, and you get mad at him because you just told him it hurt, so why are you doing it again? Well, the first time is to determine where it hurts. The next time is to determine why it hurts. How do we get to that place where we can have honest dialogue? Because you found in your husband the safest place to be able to dialogue and to share what really happened to you. How do we create an environment where it's safe? What symptoms should we be looking for, if there are symptoms?
Well, I definitely believe it's our responsibility. And I think that is probably the first key from a survivor going to a thriver, and really being the best person that you are, is to take that responsibility and to not expect others to read your mind, and to not say, well, give excuses, or it's because of this or that I am this way, or that I, feel this way. So, for instance, my husband and I, he does this thing. We'll be driving down the road and he'll point. And I'm like, yeah, there's so much you could be pointing at, and I have no idea what you're pointing at. And he expects that I'm reading his mind. And I have to tell him, like, I don't you and I have been together a long time, but I have yet to, master that skill of reading your mind. You have to show me or tell me what you're pointing at. It's the same thing in regards to what we're feeling. I don't know what his mind. He doesn't know my mind. If he does something or says something that can trigger me, or, I mean, this is in any marriage, and in all honesty, if there's something that upsets you, I have to go forward with an I statement. When this was done, I felt such and such. And and it makes me feel insecure. It makes me feel whatever, unworthy or invisible or whatever the good feeling words are. And that tends to then bring forth that conversation. Then,
Right.
of course, he would be like, well, that wasn't my intent. When I did this and this, I was doing this or whatever. Most men will probably be like, well, I had no idea. But that's a learning process that
Right.
Neil and I had to go through, was to learn how to communicate. And instead of being you, because that's kind of a reaction we want to do. Well, it's you, you've done this and it's made me feel that way. Well, not necessarily. You have to be in charge of your own reactions and your own responses and think, why, like you said, poking on it, why did I feel this way? I felt this way because he said this and it made me go back to whatever. And you have to communicate. So it's in your responsibility to be able to do that. And that's what you learn in your healing process.
How long did it take you to get there, and are you really completely there?
I'm very proud of Neil and I do have a third book coming for us. I believe that we're there, not 100%. I won't be 100% until I meet my Lord
Right.
when I die. So I don't want to be like that. We definitely have our moments and where we fail, and and I'm a yeller, unfortunately, because of just my upbringing, and that's something I definitely have to do. And that he's told me, Shannon, when you yell, it takes him back to, certain things, and it makes him feel a certain way. But we learned all that through counseling. I'm a big proponent of counseling because it taught us how to communicate, and it taught us these very good steps that were actually quite simple, just to be responsible for yourself and lower the pride. Lower the pride. Pride can kill any relationship.
The attitude of right and wrong, I ask the question to people all the time, would you rather be right or be happy? That's a decision we have to wrestle with, is, asking the question, will this matter in a week? Will this matter in a month? Will this matter in 6 months? And if it won't, why worry about the point? Yield the point. A tennis match isn't a one-point game. A baseball game isn't a one-inning game. A football game isn't a one-minute game. It's a whole period of time, and it's not about winning or losing or proving the point. But for those that have been victims of abuse, one of the things I've found fairly consistently in those that tend to be more narcissistic are there's some connection there to some prior abuse.
Yes. And I don't want to kind of try to quote any kind of percentages, but that is very common, is if they have that it can be a reaction. For instance, my sister and I love my sister, but I will say that we kind of took what happened to us and went different directions, where there are moments where she probably wants to, she's still kind of in that survivor mode. So she wants to take everything and keep it close, and kind of has that pride that's built up. And so it's got to be everybody else's fault and not mine. And I have done nothing wrong, or it's put it on everybody else. And I try to talk about that, but then whatever. So, and I went the opposite though. I blamed myself for everything. And so that's what I had to work through, was not everything is my fault either. You know what I mean? And then, so there's a good balance, because then you could also, once you start learning that ability to stick up for yourself and say, well, wait a minute, I'm getting my boundaries, I'm coming forward, but you do still have to say where your faults are as well. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. We've got about 2 minutes left in this segment. Uh, Give your best message, shout out to all those people that have gone through similar experiences to yours and what it is you really want to tell them.
Uh, I want to tell you that I see you. I don't, I see you. I see your heart. I know where you are, what you're feeling, and you are worthy. You are worth more than what has been done to you in your past. You have that ability within you, and it's just about tapping into that. Come forward and be able to find that safe place, find that partner, find that therapist, find that minister, and have your voice. Tell somebody, this is what I've gone through, and I don't want to hold on to it anymore. And the Lord is going to wrap his arms around you and bring you out of that cage. It's a cage that has no lock. It's a cage with no door. It's about being able to move forward and say, okay, I don't want to live this anymore. I want to be and live life, and I want to know who I am. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're a beautiful, beautiful woman and man that, that you're worth so much more than being stuck in that darkness.
Your circumstance, your past does not define you. God reminds you of your future. The enemy reminds you of your past. And if you want to hear the voice of the Lord very clearly, you have to face what's happened to you. The same way we have to face what we've done, we also have to come to grips with the fact that it did happen and speak and seek help, whether or not it's manifests itself as addiction, or it manifests itself as isolation or depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder or whatever, PTSD, whatever it is, there's help for you. And if you need a referral, Shannon has been so kind to help get you plugged in to a number of organizations that she lists on her website that she can connect you with. Again, the website is shannonmdeitz, DEITZ.com. The ministry is Hopeful Hearts Ministry, giving a voice to survivors of abuse. The message is, you have a voice. Use it. Use it. Shannon Deitz, so great to see you again, and thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much. I'm so blessed by you. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you, my friend. And that brings to an end our live broadcast day, but that doesn't mean we go off the air. All of our interviews today, as well as Revealing the Bible, are replayed all throughout the day. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now on WND TV. Until we see you back here in the studio tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, right here from Birmingham, Alabama, we bid you shalom.